is Anthony LaRusso changing his ways for the better? In Cobra Kai Season 4, we saw Anthony become a bully as he caused problems for Kenny Payne. Despite apologizing, LaRusso is still caught in a rivalry and is now fully committing to Miyagi-Do. Is he doing the right thing? This is why Anthony has changed. Let's talk about his rivalry with Kenny, his relationship with his family and mentors, and more. Let's first recap what we know about Anthony so far. Feel free to skip ahead to avoid the recap, but be warned, you may miss some important details later on in the video. As he grew up, Anthony would become spoiled and demanding, often spending his time playing video games and eating junk food, and didn't care for studying Miyagi-Do. He enjoyed taunting his sister on several occasions, and during the last year of middle school, started becoming a bully to Kenny Payne thanks to the influence of his friends. Anthony grows jealous of his crush, Leah, becoming friendly with Payne and torments him in different ways, through catfishing, cyberbullying, harassment, and theft. When Daniel confronts him about the hoodie, he takes his son to Miyagi-Do to begin his training, though Anthony doesn't take it seriously but has regret over his actions towards Kenny and decides to try to make amends. However, given how upset Payne is at this point, Kenny goads Anthony and his friends into the library, where he gets revenge on all but LaRusso until the librarian intervenes. Because of his actions up to this point, as most are on the internet, the LaRussos find out that Anthony has been the real bully and ground him, with Daniel even using Johnny's approach to snap some sense into him. Anthony resolves to reform his ways and apologizes to Kenny at the All Valley tournament, but Payne attacks him until he is stopped by Robbie. During the following summer, Kenny approaches Anthony at the water park with Cobra Kai, and despite the former thinking things were resolved, Payne continues to torment Anthony and also gives him a number 2 swirly at the mall. Sam agrees to teach Anthony and encourages him during their Miyagi-Do training, where he comes up with the idea to protect the eggs, resulting in the dojo passing the exercise. During the raid on Cobra Kai, Anthony helps the dojo by uploading the video and helps expose Terry Silver's rigging of the All Valley. Let's first talk about Anthony's road to change and how that occurred. As I mentioned in the recap, it's evident that he was easily one of the most unlikable LaRussos during most Cobra Kai seasons. In Season 1, he's a spoiled rich kid with a bad attitude who is obsessed with electronics. It's ironic that Daniel was worried about Sam becoming a privileged Encino brat when Anthony became that very thing. He's very demanding, talking back to his parents, even when it comes to Halloween costumes, and only likes to eat certain foods. Despite Daniel's attempts to bond, the younger LaRusso wants no part of Miyagi-Do training, and even orders another PSP when his first one is taken away. While Sam is grounded, Anthony continues to rub it in her face and is not reprimanded for it, even though Amanda is present. We do not see much of him in Seasons 2 and 3, but he still refuses to train in karate and mimics his mother to make Sam feel bad. Like Sam, Anthony is influenced by his friends to make fun of Kenny. Both LaRussos would have their doubts at times, but would ultimately succumb to peer pressure. Of course, as always, this doesn't excuse the action, but is rather the reason why it happened. While Anthony at times goes along with Zach and the others' ideas, there are times when he shows a bit of reluctance. For example, Anthony was hesitant about telling Kenny to meet up while posing as Leah, and also did not want to initially fight Kenny. After talking with his father and Leah, he decides to try to make amends, but Anthony's temper, which he inherited from his father, gets the better of him and he's lured into Payne's trap. In party time, Vanessa deduces that both Daniel and Amanda have not been involved in Anthony's life as they should have been, which resulted in him learning life lessons through the internet and possibly video games, which would explain why he didn't take his parents as seriously in the first season. When Daniel uses a page out of Johnny's book, this seems to get through as LaRusso offers to help around the house more and hang out at either the dojo or the dealership. One of the deleted scenes in Season 4 that occurs right after Daniel and Amanda talk to Vanessa is where Lucille talks about how Daniel would used to misbehave as a child as well. The key points she makes are that it takes a village, and in my case an Okinawan one, you never know what's going to get through, and just because a kid is difficult when they're younger doesn't mean that they can't grow up to be a good person, with the last statement she makes while specifically looking at Daniel. Although Anthony rightly and genuinely apologizes to Kenny, it's far too late as Payne exacts his revenge. When finally talking to Sam about his bullying extreme measures, LaRusso admits that he kind of deserved what happened to him at the water park and explains the situation, now seeing why his dad hates Cobra Kai so much. Listening to her speech about how there will always be bullies and assholes, Anthony takes her up on her offer to teach him karate and finally commits to learning Miyagi-Do. Although nervous about being so behind in terms of karate, both Sam and Robbie encourage him to use his mind to outwit the obstacle, which enables him to see how to get past Chosen's Yanbaru Kuina exercise. In a deleted scene right before the raid and head of the snake, he insists that he wants to do it for his family, echoing back to Mr. Miyagi's prediction that he would be the one to protect his family. While he doesn't do this physically, Hawk's handoff to Anthony is what allows Miyagi Fang to finally expose Silver. While I personally disliked Anthony as a character, it's great to see him finally have some character development. By no means am I a fan of his bullying, but in a way I think it took Kenny knocking some sense into him that LaRusso realized what he was doing was wrong. Let's also talk about his rivalry with Kenny. As I mentioned before, Anthony would try to make fun of Kenny to try to fit in. For example, Zach was the one who called out Payne for his dancing, with LaRusso following up to try to get a laugh from everyone else. During gym class, it's evident he has a crush on Leah, his longtime friend, and subtly insults Kenny as a ballerina when the two are playing basketball. He gets angry for being hit in the face, thinking it was on purpose, but calms down when Leah asks him to, and gets jealous when she compliments Kenny on his Dungeon Lord shirt. I think it's highly likely that Anthony himself came up with the catfish idea, as he knew Payne liked Dungeon Lord and would know how to play the game, even attempting to cover it up to Zach and the rest of the gang as he knew about Dr. Scribblebottoms. Although Thompson was the one that attacked Kenny and urges LaRusso to fight, Anthony is clearly hesitant and doesn't want to hurt anybody, though this is also because he has no karate training whatsoever despite claiming he does. In Minefields, we see that Anthony is jealous that Kenny has the attention of Leah and is frustrated because of this and Zach's taunting, resulting in him stealing Payne's clothes and taking the hoodie home, causing the latter to embarrass himself. After his failed training, LaRusso looks at the trophies and scrolls in his father's training room and regrets his actions when talking to Daniel about Kenny. Daniel mentions that Mr. Miyagi once said that Anthony was going to be a handful, but knew he was going to someday be the one to defend his family, as we see in Season 5 and the deleted scene. The following day, Anthony learns that Leah invited both him and Kenny to the fair. Seeing his chance to make amends, LaRusso attempts to, but is taunted by his favorite nickname by Payne, and he and his friends chase him to the library. Kenny takes down his enemies one by one and is about to strike Anthony, who is defenseless and afraid to get hit, but they are caught by the librarian. Payne later taunts Anthony that he got him, and the two don't interact again until the latter apologizes after Kenny's match with Robbie. In a deleted scene for the fall, it's revealed that Amanda is the one who encourages her son to apologize to him, which he does. However, Kenny is too far gone at this point and releases his rage, beating up Anthony until Robbie intervenes. Anthony does not see Kenny again until the water park, where Payne and Cobra Kai corner him. Despite thinking they were cool, the gang threw tubes on LaRusso and kicked him into the lazy river. Anthony runs into Payne at the mall when Cobra Kai is giving away flyers and t-shirts, and when refusing to take the t-shirt, LaRusso becomes a literal shithead thanks to Kenny's help. Kenny ultimately gets the last hit on Anthony as he kicks him down during the raid on Cobra Kai. One interesting thing to note is that in Taikai, Robbie makes a good point. The two would probably get along given their shared interest in Dungeon Lord if they hashed it out, but ultimately, Anthony is the one to blame for all this. I suspect in Season 6, right before Kenny joins Miyagi-Fang, he'll first have to hash out his rivalry with Anthony. Given the final trailer of Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 1, although we don't see any direct interactions between the two, this will likely occur as Kenny is shown to be in Miyagi-Fang throughout different scenes. When people discuss Kenny and Anthony, one topic persists in the conversation. Does Anthony deserve all the bullying thrown his way? For me, it's about 50-50. Where I would draw the line is where Kenny and his friends give Anthony the vile swirly at the mall, and maybe even at the water park, but I can't fault Kenny for retaliating against Anthony at the All Valley. Again, we can't forget all the things Anthony did as mentioned before. Picking on him on Kenny's first day, almost getting into a fight with him during gym class, catfishing Kenny and getting him to embarrass himself while also recording this via video, stuffing milk in his locker, throwing milk at him, and stealing his clothes. Payne was bound to snap at some point, and he vowed that Anthony would enter a world of pain when they were in high school. Though as we know, and as I talked about in my Why Kenny is Still Corrupted video, Cobra Kai has fully corrupted Payne at this point, and he's too focused on revenge. Let's also talk about Anthony's relationship with his family. During the first season, Anthony typically talks back and doesn't seem to respect his parents. He's seen asking "where the hell is my drink?", not being appreciative of his parents cooking breakfast, calling out his dad for exaggerating, though rightly so, ordering video game consoles without permission, and in a deleted scene, Anthony acts like he loves Daniel as a ploy to ask for money. However, there seems to be some legitimate love for his parents. In counterbalance, Anthony defends his father against Roland by pointing out that he sells cars and knows karate. He also gets along with Daniel during the All Valley and starts to show an interest in karate from watching Robbie's match, and is disappointed he has to leave before the finals. In Season 2, Anthony decides to still not participate in karate and even cares less about going to camp, and when regarding the former, does not want to do chores. In Season 3, he tends to mimic his mother Amanda when she gets on to Sam for training with her friends at Miyagi-Do. In Season 4, Anthony feigns interest in learning Miyagi-Do, but is ultimately sick of hearing about Mr. Miyagi and doesn't care about its history, though later has a change of heart. LaRusso also finally starts to listen when being grounded and being told to be quiet, offering to help out more around the house. In Season 5, he is supportive of his father and is there to try to help him get out of the slump in the episode Earl Burrows. As mentioned before, he wants to take down Cobra Kai for his family in a deleted scene. It's also worth pointing out that in Extreme Measures, it's implied that Anthony gets his love for video games from his mom, as she used to hang out and play before getting into underage drinking. With Sam, in Season 1, it's clear that Anthony loves to annoy his sister. He argues with her during molting when the LaRussos all get into different arguments and constantly taunts her while she's grounded and different but sane. Anthony acts like a parent in Season 3 towards Sam when she's caught training the others in Miyagi-Do, though doing this to annoy his sister. There's not much interaction between the two in Season 4, but in Season 5 is where their bond strengthens. In Playing with Fire, LaRusso attempts to ask his sister for help with Kenny, but because Sam is sick of karate, he jokes that she's upset because another one of her boyfriends ran away. It's not until they are hanging out in Extreme Measures that Sam realizes that her brother was being bullied by Cobra Kai and asks why he didn't come get her. From here on out, she starts to act like a mentor to her brother as she listens to his story and offers to later teach him karate when Anthony is impressed by her skills. During Bad Eggs, Sam encourages Anthony that he's not alone and to also outwit the obstacle. As mentioned before, in a deleted scene in Head of the Snake, she tries to protect Anthony, who insists on joining the fight. Here are my final thoughts on Anthony and what we can expect to see from him in the future. Anthony's come a long way, but he still has a journey ahead. I think he'll be appreciated more as a character when he buries the hatchet completely with Kenny in Season 6, which is bound to happen as Pain joins Miyagi-Fang and comes clean about everything up to that point. I would love to see a Robbie Miguel type of friendship between the two, and now that Anthony has proper mentors in both Robbie and Sam, as the former was seen in a few scenes helping him out, he'll finally be on the right path. It's hard to say where we'll see Anthony in the Sekai Tekai, but I think we can see him at least in a tier below Miguel, Hawk, Robbie, and Dimitri. Thankfully, Anthony stopped going down the path he did and realized the errors of his ways. However, that can't be said the same about his rival Kenny, who was a victim of his bullying and continued to go down a dark path until the end of Season 5.